Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Gold Glove finalists have been announced, and the Dodgers have a few names in there and one name twice. So we'll talk about that. We will talk about Trea Turner and why he might look a little bit different playing for the Phillies than he did playing for the Dodgers. And then we'll get into some of the comments from Dave Roberts and Andrew Friedman once the season was over and how, maybe they echoed similar sentiments to what they said last year. So that's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fan perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, that's someone that listens or watches every day, well, then all you need to do is listen or watch every single day, or as close to every single day as you can. You can miss a day or two every so often. But you can also subscribe wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube to help you out. And get notified when our episodes are ready for you, which is usually every weekday morning by the time you're going to work for the most part. This one for sure will be ready by the time you go to work. If this is your first time listening, watching, I'm Vince Samperio, joined by my co-host, Jeff Snider, and we are both lifelong Dodger fans. We have watched a lot of Dodger games. We've covered the team. We've been to Camelback Ranch. We've been around the country and outside the country to watch the Dodgers. And we're here to bring you what we believe is some smart, rational thoughts on the Dodgers that you can maybe, absorb in a different way than maybe you might think about the Dodgers. And today we are going to get into that again. But real quick, Jeff, thanks for holding it down. That East Coast, I don't know how people do that East Coast sports timing because it's a mess.
Yeah, especially if you're a fan of a West Coast team. Like, I don't often feel bad for Javi from Locked On Padres. I think for the most part he gets what he deserves. But living in New Jersey and being a Padres fan, that's even worse than a Padres fan in general. Like, I don't get it. And then having to do a podcast after the games. Like, it's hard enough for us to stay up and do a podcast during the season after the games, and Javi's 3 hours later than his team. So poor Javi. He has to live with his choices, though.
Yeah, that's true. There was no NLCS game last night. There was an ALCS game. The Rangers lost. Max Scherzer was on the roster for this round, and he pitched, and he gave up a few runs. The Astros ended up tacking on more runs, and now it's a 2-1 series, still in favor of the Rangers. But, I think ever since Dave Roberts ruined and the Dodgers ruined Max Scherzer, he hasn't been able to pitch well in the postseason, Jeff.
Yeah, Dave Roberts, he has staying power, if nothing else. Like when he ruins somebody, he really, really ruins them. I guess he ruined him by bringing him in to pitch the ninth inning in that Game 5 of the NLDS. Maybe Wilmer Flores ruined him. Maybe it's karma for getting that strike call that shouldn't have been called. So maybe it was Gabe Morales who ruined Max Scherzer, the umpire.
Yeah, I think the Rangers gave him too much rest. I think that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, he just needs to work more, injury or not, just work. So
just go out there every 5 days and make your pitches, Max Scherzer.
Yep.
But yeah, so there's NLCS tonight. The Diamondbacks will now host the Phillies. We'll see what happens there. Brandon Pfaadt will be pitching, who I don't think he'll be doing the no runs allowed thing like he did against the Dodgers.
Yeah, his big issue this year was home runs, and he did pitch better late in the season. But yeah, it's hard to see the Phillies not have. I mean, they beat up on Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. Why can I never remember Merrill Kelly's name? It's worse than Logan Webb. Anyway, so if they beat up on the D-backs 2 good pitchers, they're probably going to beat up on Brandon Pfaadt too.
Yeah, the only news out of Dodgerland was Rawlings announced the Gold Glove finalists, and 2 names for sure I thought we were going to see, and 1 name I didn't think we were going to see, and not someone that I don't know. I don't think he's going to win. I hope not, for the Gold Glove sake. So Freddie Freeman is a finalist at first base. David Peralta is a finalist in left field, which just shows me that left field doesn't have many strong candidates, because when a ball is hit to left field and David Peralta's out there, the way he routes and tracks things wasn't my favorite. But he made the plays. It just didn't always look pretty. And then Mookie Betts was on 2 different finalists. He was a finalist in right field and a finalist for utility, which utility hasn't been around for a while, so I'm assuming he's going to be the first one that did that. I don't remember the finalist last year, but
I know that Gold Gloves, I can't think, and Ha-Seong Kim is a finalist at 2 positions too. I don't think anybody was a finalist at multiple positions last year. Eric Steven did point out that back in 2018, JD Martinez won 2 Silver Slugger awards as a DH and an outfielder. I'm sure nobody's ever won 2 Gold Gloves in the same season. I'm also sure Mookie won't do it this year. I think Tatis is going to win the Gold Glove in right field, and hopefully Kim wins the Gold Glove at second base and leaves the utility Gold Glove for Mookie. I think Mookie deserves it, and so that way everybody gets something. Peralta was a little bit surprising, but it was kind of surprising to look at his numbers. Outs above average doesn't like Peralta. He was -3 outs above average, so I guess 3 outs below average. It's always funny to use a negative with the a stat with the word above in it. And that's not great. There aren't. I mean, Christian Yelich led the National League with 4 National League left fielders with 4 outs above average. Eddie Rosario had 3. Corbin Carroll had 2. No, Jankowski's not in the National League anymore. Garrett Stone had 1. Lourdes Gurriel had 1. Really, there were no elite defensive outfielders. But interestingly, according to UZR, Peralta actually was really good this year. He had the best UZR of his career by quite a bit. And he won a Gold Glove back in 2019. His UZR that year was 6.2. His UZR /150, so basically over a full season, was 9.5. This year is 9.0 and 14.9. So a good 50% better this year than the year he won a Gold Glove. And the thing that surprised me the most is Peralta used to have a good arm, and yet this year was his best arm rating according to FanGraphs. He was 4.6 whatevers. I don't even know what runs above average. 4.6 runs above average with his arm. And Peralta doesn't have a good arm, but maybe it was positioning and charging the ball. I know he did have a couple high-profile plays where he threw guys out, but you never feel comfortable or confident when there's going to be a play that needs a good throw from Peralta. And so, I was a little bit surprised to see that the numbers liked him this year. I don't think they liked him enough to. Who were the other 2 finalists in left field? You even remember?
Beats me.
Yeah. So assuming that,
I think Rosario was one of them.
Okay. So, and I don't know if Yelich has won a Gold Glove before. He was the best according to outs above average. So, I suspect that Peralta won't win. I also suspect that
Ian Happ was the 3rd one.
Oh, Ian Happ. Okay. I suspect that Freddie Freeman won't win either. I think that's Christian Walker's to lose. Ian Happ, I'm looking for outs above average. Ian Happ was significantly worse than Peralta. He was -7 outs above average. The only guys worse than him were Juan Soto, Masataka Yoshida, Andrew Benintendi, Jerickson Profaro, and Kyle Schwarber. Not exactly great company to be in. So congrats on your Gold Glove finalist, Ian, I guess. I think Mookie at utility is the Dodgers' best chance to actually win a Gold Glove this year.
Yeah, I think so too. And Peralta this year, like I said, he always made the play. I don't remember any plays where I'm like, oh man, he could have made that, should have made that. Maybe 1 or 2. But it was, I remember I was talking to Eric Steven actually had a game one time when the ball got hit to left field, and I was like, man, Peralta just gives me Carl Crawford vibes of like, it doesn't look pretty. He usually gets there and makes the play. And Eric's even likened it to, it looks like he's playing left field on skates. And that's kind of what it was. Like like the way he got to the ball was always interesting, but he did always get there. So
yeah. And no rule says you, just like no rule says that a dog can't play basketball. No rule says a guy on roller skates can't win a Gold Glove.
yeah, there you go. All right. Trea Turner has had a good postseason so far for the Phillies. That's not as too surprising, but the way he's been, mannerisms and everything else on the field does look a little bit different. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and why he looks, maybe more comfortable with the Phillies or whatever you want to call it. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. MLB playoffs are here, and there's not that many games left. The clock is ticking on your chance to grow your money 100 times with daily fantasy baseball. And there are other sports, so don't get me wrong. There's other sports that you can still grow your money and win 100 times your payout. But if you want to do it in baseball, there's not that much time. And the Sleeper app is pretty easy to use, especially for these picks. There's a lot of other things going on with Super App, but with these picks specifically, it's literally laid out right there out for you on the app. You go in the app and you go to picks, and it'll show you a player, and you can toggle between which stats you want to look at, and it'll give you a number, and you pick more or less, and it'll show you how much the multiplier is for each of those picks, and you make that pick. So for Bryce Harper, if you think he's going to hit a home run, the number is 0.5. So if you think he's going to hit a home run, the multiplier is around 3. So you would win 3 times your money. If you don't think he's going to hit a home run, the multiplier is a little bit less because that's more likely to happen. The multiplier is around 1. So you win 1 times your money. You just double your money. So there are a lot of different players on there that you can go check out, and you can build it right now. If you want to just throw some picks down on the Phillies to just over everything against Brandon Pfaadt in Arizona. Phillies are hot. That would be the way to go. And you can make up to 8 picks. And again, you can win up to 100 times your money. So go check out the Sleeper app right now. Build out a day of picks and, see what happens. So use the promo code Locked On when you do it, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. So that's $300 once you deposit some money in there. So there's really no reason not to go check out the Sleeper app right now. Remember, terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Go check out Sleeper today. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to listen or watch every day. Become an everydayer. Those are all things that make Jeff and I pretty happy. If you do some of those things or all those things. And SiriusXM, if you want to listen to any of the games going on the rest of the postseason, SiriusXM can help you out. And next year, if you want to listen to the Dodgers, SiriusXM can also help you out. All you got to do is search Dodgers. You can find us on there too with Locked On Dodgers. All right, Jeff. So yesterday pregame, they were showing highlights and stuff. And this is not a name drop, but I was sitting in the kind of the waiting room in the studios with Yonder Alonso and Kike and some other people were there. And Trea Turner became a quick topic of discussion, just how he looks more animated this year with the Phillies. How, I kind of pointed out, like, I don't remember him celebrating and being as hyped and big as he was, or, big into the game as he was this last postseason. Obviously, you could say, oh, it's because they didn't win. Well, the Dodgers did win the postseason series when Trea Turner was there, and, he still didn't look like that. We kind of talked about how Trea Turner always looked a little bit like a hired gun as well when the Dodgers got him. Even when they adopted, the tapping on the head for the celebration, it never really seemed like Trea Turner was 100% comfortable in LA. He kind of alluded to that too in the past. But, kind of what I want to talk about is just like, what do you think, or what do we think that makes him feel more comfortable? Is it the contract and like, okay, I'm going to be here forever, I feel more comfortable now? One of the topics that kind of brought up, I think Yonder and Kike both kind of mentioned it, was the World Baseball Classic helped bring those emotions out of him a little bit more. He was a big part of that. He had some, a lot of home runs, caught fire, and that maybe helped out. and then maybe, just being comfortable and with the team that he got to choose rather than the team that he got traded to.
Yeah, and that's, the fact is both major league teams that he played for before the Phillies were teams that he got traded to with no power over where he was going. And the Phillies, he got to choose the team that he wanted to play for. I think that's definitely a big part of it, knowing this is the team I chose and the team I'm going to finish my career with because I signed an 850-year contract. I'm going to play with these guys forever. So this is, I think there's definitely a comfort level that comes with that. Obviously, it didn't show up on the field the first half of the season, and I think you can't overlook the way Phillies fans treated him. The standing ovations when he was struggling that helped bring him out of that slump. I think that probably helped him mentally, helped him kind of, whatever it is. I think that he feels very, very comfortable there. And I think being teammates with Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos, especially those two, but kind of the whole team, that emotion is contagious. And I talked yesterday about whether emotion is necessary, whether you have to be fired up to be successful in the postseason. And I don't necessarily think you do, but if we're talking about why Trey seems fired up, I do think that does. I think it's contagious, and so you watch Nick Castellanos hit a home run, and the emotion he shows all the time. It's not gonna, it's definitely gonna rub off on him, and not necessarily on everybody. I think there's some guys who are just gonna put their head down and do their thing, no matter who their teammates are. But I think Trey, and not to say, I think he's a follower in that way, and not in a bad way, but just I think he's gonna kind of mirror the emotion of the people around him sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, Corey Seager signed a deal and he's with the Rangers forever, but he looks like the same guy that he was with the Dodgers. He's not that type of guy and the Rangers are a little bit more subdued than the Phillies. Not like I said, not nothing bad or good about that. Just that's the nature of what it looks like. But yeah, with Trey,
I was just say the fact is Trey chose to play in Philadelphia and Corey chose to play in Texas, and you kind of know what you're getting with those. Those choices kind of reflect their personalities too. That going to Philadelphia, you're getting a very passionate, emotional fan base, and Texas is more laid back. The fans obviously love their team, not a value judgment on that, but Texas is a more laid back place than Philadelphia, and so I think that reflects their personalities too.
Yeah, you look at Trey's numbers and you can say, oh, I think we remember that Trey, maybe some of us remember like, oh, he wasn't good with the Dodgers in the postseason, which is not 100% true. He was, if you look at it's weird if you look at by series because it's like, oh, he hit 500 one series, then he hit 136, then 240, then 333. That first thing he did hit 500, but that was just the one wild card game. He went 2 for 4. He didn't hit as well the rest of that postseason, and then he hit well last year in the postseason, but nobody else in the Dodgers. But then you look at his numbers now, and he's 571 with a 1.482 OPS in the first round, 471 with the 1.441 OPS in the second round, and right now he's hitting 500 with the 1.7. Like he's on fire right now. And again, I don't know if it's not directly attributable to everything we just talked about in terms of like the passion and like the Phillies are just hot right now. Trey was a streaky hitter. He's on the hot streak right now. We saw it in the World Baseball Classic. He caught that hot streak and he, kind of led Team USA into that final. And then when the season started, he kind of fell back, down and was not good for a few months, which led to that point where he got the standing ovation from the crowd and they backed him up and everything else. So I just think to me, it was one of those where you can really tell that not that maybe he didn't want to be in LA, he didn't like being in LA. It just wasn't his decision. And the Dodger team was also a little like the Dodger team wasn't like that. And they didn't celebrate like that. They didn't have that emotion. The Dodger fan base is great, but I went to Philly for a World Series game and it's just a little bit different over there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Trey always knew he wasn't going to be a long-term Dodgers. He knew he was playing a year and 2 months with the Dodgers. And so, not that he didn't give his all, but it maybe his all wasn't as much as his all is now that he's in Philadelphia.
Yeah. But again, on top of all this, like the Phillies aren't like this if they're losing and not hitting. Like it's that's just the nature of the game.
Yeah, there's a
So
cause and effect for sure. Is he
yeah,
fired up because he's successful, or is he successful because he's fired up? Like in the World Baseball Classic, that emotion we saw came after he hit the big grand slam. It's not didn't go up to the plate, like a Savannah Bananas player, announcing himself and getting the box all cocky and everything, and then hit the grand slam. He hit the grand slam and then showed the emotion. And so, I don't think he was super fired up early in the season when he was struggling. And now that he's tearing the cover off the ball, he is. And I would suspect it's more of an effect than a cause.
yeah. And both sides, even like Diamondbacks and Phillies, there's just every clubhouse is different. And I don't know if the Dodgers will ever get to a point where they're fired up when things are going well. And I don't think there's it's hard for us to talk about it right now because you think about 2020, hey, that team was fired up, but they also were hitting very well and scoring a lot of runs.
And you can see it with the Diamondbacks this year that, that we wanted the Dodgers to play with the emotion that the Diamondbacks were showing. Diamondbacks aren't showing much emotion because they're getting their butts kicked. It's like there's a perfect example of, I really do believe the emotion is, and the chemistry and all that stuff. That's an effect of winning, not a cause of winning.
That's a perfect segue into the next segment, talking about Dave Roberts and his comments after, and kind of about that fired up and getting people ready for the postseason, a little bit along with Andrew Friedman's comments. So we're gonna dive into that and make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers for that. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. If you live in California, the big one, the earthquake, is always maybe on the back of your mind, maybe not on the forefront of your mind, but always in the back of your mind. And let's just say a big earthquake does hit. Will you be prepared? Not prepared food wise, not prepared, water wise, not prepared anything else like that. But would you be prepared medically? The answer is probably no. And that's why Jace Medical is here to kind of help out with that. They do not want you to get caught unprepared. They want you to be ready for anything. And what does that entail? Well, Jace will handle everything from online evaluation to a licensed pharmacy, medication delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. They have a Jace case, and that Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics that can help out when there is disaster, or even if you just need it in a pinch. And it's very easy. You just go online, you fill out the form, and you may need to talk to a doctor directly, you may not, and then you get your Jace case sent to you, and then you're ready and prepared for whatever's going to happen, whether it's earthquake, pandemic, or like I said, just in a pinch, like, hey, you know what, I really need this. I don't want to go to urgent care right now. Hey, I have my Jace case. I'm ready to go. So Jace Case is there to help you out. So right now, go to jasemedical.com and check it out and get your Jace Case and be ready for whatever with your Jace Case and Jace Medical. Thank you for watching Locked On Dodgers or listening to Locked On Dodgers if you're doing so right now. And make sure to come back with us every single weekday, Monday through Friday, because that's when we're here for you the entire offseason and the entire regular season once we start back up next year. And remember, SiriusXM can also help you out if you want to listen to Locked On Dodgers, or if you want to listen to a baseball game, you can do so with SiriusXM or the SXM app. All right, Jeff, last little thing here. Kind of looking back at comments made by Dave Roberts and Andrew Friedman based on the loss this year and the loss last year. And to me, it one of those where, like, as a fan, if I get into not even a rational 100% fan, just like my fandom as a team, as someone that watches all these games, and then the Dodgers go out the way they did the last 2 years. And for me, the verbiage and the same kind of words used the last 2 years by Andrew Friedman, organizational failure last year and this year. Dave Roberts, not necessarily directly after the series, but in the winter meetings last year, talking about maybe the team wasn't fired up, whatever. they weren't as energetic as the Padres. And then this year kind of saying like, obviously the team, whatever, not prepared for the postseason. I have to figure out ways to, figure that out. And, on my end, while I understand that they're going to say what they need to say, like they're not going to throw anyone under the bus. They're not going to say anything that says, because I don't think they know directly why the team lost the last 2 years. But also, as a fan, when you hear the same thing 2 years in a row, you're like, okay, well, how do we make sure this doesn't happen a third year in a row? Because I've already heard the same thing 2 years in a row. And there's no right answer, but just as a fan, I can see why there's an annoyance, but also as, someone that looks at it in a different lens, I can see why it's like, well, they can't really say anything else.
Yeah. They're not going to sit there and say, Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts combined for one infield single. They're not going to say Clayton Kershaw imploded on the mound. That we all know what happened on the field, and the fact is, everybody would probably be better served if they just didn't even have this kind of press conference where they're not going to say anything meaningful, but people have their articles to write. We have podcasts to do to talk about things. And so they have to answer those questions. But, and even if Roberts was being 100% sincere, which I don't think he is, I think he is paying lip service to the idea, that 95% of fans already think the problem was that they weren't fired up enough. I think the reason they weren't fired up is because they had a total of 9 at bats when they weren't trailing by multiple runs. It's hard to be fired up in those situations. And so sure, I'll say that Dave Roberts knows his job is safe right now. And so it doesn't really matter what he says. So I think there's that, but I also think even if we took it all at face value, evaluating your own job performance, there's nothing that makes what Dave Roberts says about Dave Roberts's job performance any more valid than what anybody else says. And maybe it's less valid because he is too close to actually see it objectively. So yeah, it would be natural for him to be thinking, how did this happen 2 years in a row? I'm the manager. It's my responsibility to do this. What do I need to do differently? That would be a perfectly reasonable, honest thing for him to think, even if the answer is Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and everybody else needs to hit better, but as a manager, yeah, it makes sense for him to look inward and think, what should I be doing differently? And I don't know that there's going to be a satisfying answer for him.
Yeah. And I think if like getting real on it, I think the whole philosophy of Friedman and everyone else in the organization would have to significantly change for this to be like a real change. Like they can go the Dave Dombrowski route and just spend a bunch of money and hope it works out. They can go, the AJ Preller route and just trade all their young talent and hope it works out. And there's varying degrees. Like, has it worked out for Dave Dombrowski in the past? Yes, once. Every time he's made a stop, it's worked out once. With AJ Preller, it hasn't worked out at all, really, unless they count their World Series that they won last year against the Dodgers. But it's one of those things where I do think we're almost at a point where maybe that philosophy does shift a little in for Friedman, and not in the way maybe a lot of people want, like huge sweeping changes, but I could see them being slightly more irrational once or twice, maybe going into this offseason or maybe even into the future, where it's like, you know what, it is expensive for this starting pitcher at the trade deadline, but you know what, we're going to try it because we've done it the other way and it worked once, but it's also not worked a few times. So
yeah, and they can still take their approach even with that. They would just have to go into it knowing, hey, we are perfectly willing to eat this money and cut the guy from the roster when he's no longer contributing, because I really do think they value the roster spots more than the money. And so, yeah, they could, like if they had signed Zach Greinke after the 2015 season, they could have done it with the mindset of, okay, when his fastball gets down to 36 miles an hour in 2019 to 2020, we're just going to cut him, and I think they could take that approach. the thing that I wish more people remembered is that emotion doesn't win games. Like, and I've seen so many people saying they need somebody like Tommy Lasorda to kick him in the butt. Tommy Lasorda wouldn't stand for this. I love Tommy Lasorda. He was the manager of my youth. I you know, I'm about to say something that some people will interpret as me bashing Tommy Lasorda. It's not. I love Tommy Lasorda. In Tommy Lasorda's first 8 seasons, he won 1 World Series. He lost 2 World Series, just like Dave Roberts in his first 8 seasons. Difference is in the 5 seasons that Lasorda's teams didn't make the World Series, they didn't make the playoffs in 3 or 4 of those seasons. Dave Roberts has already won the division almost as many times as Lasorda did. Lasorda managed for 22 seasons and won 8 division titles. Roberts has managed for 8 seasons and won 7 division titles. I'm not saying Dave Roberts is a better manager than Tommy Lasorda. I'm saying he's had more success than Tommy Lasorda had. And definitely there's nothing that suggests that if Dave Roberts was more like Tommy Lasorda, things would be better. That people are different.
I mean, the direct flip side is Bruce Bochy. All Dodger fans want Bruce Bochy, and
when
he's
you're
not
winning,
that at all.
yeah, I've seen so many headlines about Bruce Bochy is a calming influence on the Rangers, which is exactly what they need. And when you win, the calming influence is good. When you lose, the calming influence wasn't tough enough. And the big factor there is how well did the players on the field play?
Yeah. And I think, like I said, the emotion that's going to come with winning. But I do think, the emphasis on the regular season might not be as strong as it has been in the past. That having 2 really good starting pitchers and, a very good offense and, maybe like I said, you do win 85, 90 games in the regular season because you don't have, all that depth and everything else. But, maybe you go different, not fully. They're still going to have that depth, but, maybe they go after and say, hey, we need 2 guys that are aces. And they've had that before and they didn't win. But again, there's no way to predict what's going to happen. So, it's kind of like, for me, I liken it to TikTok a little bit as when I work is like, I'm just going to throw stuff at the wall and hopefully something sticks at one point. And, that's not what the Dodgers do, but they've tried a whole lot of different ways of building a team. And it hasn't worked out, more often than not in terms of winning the World Series.
In terms of winning the World Series, getting to 3 World Series in 8 years is pretty good. I think these last 2 years, it's left a sour note. But I think they'll do a little more throwing stuff at the wall anyway.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Like I said, NLCS and ALCS tonight, so we'll see what happens in those series. I kind of want Philly to end it in Arizona because I want to see if they're going to jump in the pool. That's really, and it's a short trip for me if I do have to go for work. So, but that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. We will be talking about probably the NLCS game. We'll talk about maybe Corey Seager and if the Dodgers should have signed him or offered him the same amount of money, and maybe a couple other things related to the Dodgers. So that's coming up in the future. So make sure to subscribe. Locked On Dodgers via podcast and on YouTube. Remember, you can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. Our DMs are open for any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, turn Smart Device Play Podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.